In the spring of 2019, a photo began to spread across the internet. It showed a young woman, sitting on the floor of a small apartment. Her legs folded neatly under her, like she was meditating. A cigarette rested between her fingers. Her white shirt was covered in blood. Her face, pale and calm, showed no fear, no panic. Just peace. At first, many people didn't know what had happened. They didn't know her name. But the image was powerful, strange, and in its own way, beautiful. Her name was Yuka Takaoka, and she had just stabbed the man she said she loved. Yuka was only 21 years old at the time. She lived and worked in Tokyo, in an area called Kabukicho, one of the most famous nightlife districts in Japan. Bars, clubs, and neon lights filled the narrow streets. This place never really slept. Yuka worked as a hostess in a small girls' bar. Her job was to talk to male customers, pour drinks, and keep them company. It wasn't anything physical, just conversation and charm. She was soft-spoken, with long black hair and pale skin. Her smile was quiet. People said she looked like someone from an anime, gentle, sweet, and innocent. But behind that appearance, something darker was growing. Yuka had recently started a relationship, or at least she believed it was one, with a man named Phoenix Luna. Phoenix was a host in another part of Shinjuku. Hosts are male workers who entertain women, much like hostesses do for men. Yuka became one of his regular customers. She spent a lot of time and money visiting him. In her mind, their connection was more than just business. It was love. Real, deep love. They eventually moved in together. At least for a short time. But things were not perfect. Yuka felt he was distant. Maybe even lying to her. One night, she looked through his phone. She found pictures of him with another woman. She felt shocked, hurt, angry. And that night around 3:50 a.m. after he had fallen asleep, Yuka picked up a kitchen knife. And she stabbed him in the stomach. Phoenix somehow managed to run down the elevator and into the building lobby. He collapsed near the door. A staff member found him lying in a pool of blood. Phoenix survived the attack. He needed emergency surgery, but he lived. Yuka was arrested not long after. Normally, in a case like this, the public reaction would be one of shock, anger, and sadness. But this case was different. After her arrest, Yuka's face became famous. People online started sharing the photo of her sitting on the floor, smoking a cigarette calmly next to the man she had just attacked. Many were horrified. But others were fascinated. Some called her crazy. Others called her beautiful. And then, a strange nickname began to appear. The real-life Yandere. In Japanese anime and manga, a Yandere is a character, usually a girl who is sweet and loving on the outside, but dangerous and obsessive underneath. Put together, a Yandere is someone who loves too much. So much, that they might hurt others to protect that love. In stories, Yandere characters often say things like, "If I can't have you, no one can." Or, "I love you so much, I'd die for you, or kill for you." It's meant to be dramatic, emotional, even scary. But here's the thing, in anime, it's fiction. In real life, it's something very different. Many anime fans began to romanticize Yuka's actions. They shared fan art of her online, drawings of her smiling sweetly, holding a bloody knife. They posted messages like, "She's the perfect Yandere. This is true love. I wish someone loved me that much." Some even followed her Instagram, sent her messages in prison, and praised her in forums. But others, including many in Japan, were deeply disturbed. They asked, why are people treating a violent act like a love story? Why do some fans think obsession is romantic? What message does this send to young people? Love is meant to be safe, kind, respectful. Obsession is different. It's not about the other person. It's about control, fear, and insecurity. Yuka's actions were not a symbol of love. They were a result of deep emotional pain, jealousy, and mental instability. But many people, especially online, ignored this. They focused on her looks, her quiet smile, the dramatic story. For them, she had become a character, not a real person. And Phoenix, the man who almost died, was forgotten in the background. It was the afternoon of May 23, 2019, a Thursday, in Shinjuku, Tokyo. The city was loud, as always, filled with people going to work, neon lights blinking even in daytime, vending machines buzzing with energy drinks and cigarettes. In one of the tall, gray apartment buildings, nothing looked unusual. People walked past without thinking. Inside, it was quiet. But something had already happened on the 5th floor. Something terrible. The apartment building was mostly used for short-term rentals. Some people lived there only for a few weeks. Some were hostesses, bar workers, or club staff from Kabukicho, Tokyo's red light district, just around the corner. The hallways were narrow. The floors were clean. A security guard sat near the front entrance, half watching the cameras, half looking at his phone. Everything felt normal until a man came stumbling out of the elevator. It was a man in his 20s. Tall, but weak on his feet. His shirt was red. His hands were shaking. He was barefoot, and his eyes were wide like he had seen something from a nightmare. He walked unsteadily into the lobby. Then he collapsed. People nearby screamed. One woman from a lower floor dropped her grocery bag and rushed forward. "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" she asked, but there was too much blood to answer. The security guard stood up, stunned. For a second, no one moved. Then someone called for help. At exactly 4 p.m., the front desk called 119, Japan's emergency number. They reported a young man lying unconscious in the lobby. The operator asked, "Is he breathing?" "Yes," the woman said. "But just barely." "Is there a weapon?" "We don't know. He came from upstairs." Police and paramedics were sent immediately. The scene in the lobby was tense. People from other floors had come down, whispering, some filming with their phones. The man on the floor was identified as Phoenix Luna. He worked at a nearby bar. Most people didn't know his real name, only his stage name. Some recognized him. A few gasped. "That's the guy from the host club. What happened to him? Did someone attack him upstairs?" The ambulance arrived quickly. They lifted Phoenix onto a stretcher. His skin was pale. He was still breathing, but barely. His eyes fluttered open for a moment, then closed again. While the paramedics rushed to save Phoenix, the police headed up to the 5th floor. They moved carefully. No one knew if a weapon was still inside. A neighbor pointed them to the apartment door that Phoenix had exited from. It was half open. One officer called out, "Police. Is anyone inside?" No answer. Then they stepped in. The first thing the officers noticed was the smell, metallic, heavy, and unnatural. Then they saw her. Sitting on the floor near the bed was Yuka Takaoka. She was barefoot, wearing a long, white shirt that was stained red. She looked up calmly. One hand was resting on her lap. The other was near a kitchen knife lying beside her. But she made no move to pick it up. She didn't flinch. One officer asked, "Are you hurt?" She smiled. And then she said something strange. "I already did what I needed to do." The room was a mess, clothes thrown around, blood on the walls and floor. But Yuka sat there as if nothing had happened. There was no panic in her face. No fear. No tears. In fact, she looked peaceful. Almost satisfied. It was this reaction that shocked the police the most. They had expected a person in shock. Someone screaming or crying. Someone angry, shaking, confused. But not Yuka. Later, in court, psychologists would try to explain this moment. Some said she had emotionally shut down. Others said she was living in a fantasy, imagining this as a tragic love story. But on that day, the officers could only guess. They handcuffed her gently. She didn't resist. She stood up on her own, looked around one last time, and walked with them into the hallway, still quiet. As Yuka rode down in the elevator with the officers, she looked at her reflection in the shiny metal doors. She noticed a small cut on her cheek. Her eyes were open wide, but not afraid. She said softly, to no one in particular, "I thought we could die together." One officer glanced at her but said nothing. When the police brought Yuka through the lobby, she passed the spot where Phoenix had fallen. She paused for a moment, then looked straight ahead. A local news photographer happened to be nearby. They snapped a photo as Yuka walked past, hands cuffed, face calm, clothes stained. That photo would go viral within hours. In the image, Yuka looked almost dreamy, as if she were in another world. It became one of the most shared crime images in Japanese media that year. Back in the apartment, one officer noticed something else. Next to the knife on the floor was a half-full drink. A canned juice. It was placed neatly beside the knife, like someone had stopped to take a sip after everything was over. This detail stayed with the officers. It made the crime feel even more surreal. Who has a drink after something like that? But Yuka did. As the news spread through the building, neighbors talked in hushed voices. Some couldn't believe it. She seemed so quiet, one person said. "I heard them laughing last night," another added. "She was always polite when she passed me." No one could imagine that just one floor above, a tragedy had unfolded. Some residents started packing to leave. They didn't want to sleep in the same building. One woman told a reporter, "I used to feel safe here. Not anymore." That night, Tokyo kept moving. Trains ran. Lights flashed. Bars stayed open. People laughed and danced. But in one small corner of Shinjuku, behind yellow tape and flashing lights, something had changed. Inside one apartment, the walls told a quiet, painful story. And outside, the internet was about to do what it always does: take a tragedy, and turn it into a tale. The police car moved slowly through Tokyo traffic. The streets were bright, even though the sun had gone down. Inside the car, Yuka Takaoka sat between two officers. Her hands were still cuffed. Her white shirt, once clean, now had dried, dark stains across the sleeves and chest. She didn't speak much. She looked out the window, calm as if she were on her way home from work, not being taken in for attempted murder. They arrived at the Shinjuku police station just after 6:30 p.m. Outside, a small crowd had gathered: reporters, neighbors, curious strangers. News had already spread online about a stabbing in a love hotel apartment. Yuka stepped out of the car slowly. She didn't cover her face like most suspects. She didn't cry. She didn't fight the cameras. She looked straight ahead and walked in. In the interrogation room, two detectives sat with her. One was older, quiet, experienced. The other was younger, watching her carefully. They started with the basics. "What is your name?" "Takaoka Yuka," she said softly. "Do you know why you are here?" She nodded. Then she said, "I didn't want to kill him. I just wanted to die with him." As the interview went on, it became clear Yuka was not trying to lie. But she also wasn't thinking clearly. Sometimes she spoke calmly. Other times she went quiet, staring at the floor. At one point, she asked if Phoenix was okay. They told her. He is in the hospital. He is alive. She smiled a soft, sad smile. And said, "That's good. I didn't want him to leave me. I just wanted us to be together, always." That same night, a photo of Yuka taken during her arrest started to spread online. In the picture, she had a calm expression. Her face looked gentle, even innocent. She wasn't screaming or crying. Her clothes were stained, but her posture was relaxed. Some people thought it looked like a scene from a movie. One user posted it on Twitter with the caption, "This is what a real Yandere looks like." Others followed. By morning, the image had been seen by hundreds of thousands. At first, people were shocked. What kind of person does this? She's so calm, it's scary. Why is she smiling? But then something strange happened. Instead of everyone condemning her, a small group of people online started admiring her. They called her Yandere Queen. They said she was beautiful, tragic, romantic. They shared fan art drawings of her holding a knife and smiling. Some even said, "She did it out of love." That's kind of sweet, right? But this wasn't love. It was obsession. Real love does not hurt others. Real love respects space, choice, and safety. But for these online fans, that line was blurry. Many of them were young. Some were anime fans who didn't fully understand how fiction differs from real life. Others were simply drawn to her image, a quiet girl with dark eyes and a soft voice, wrapped in a violent story. They didn't see the pain. They didn't think about Phoenix. They only saw the fantasy. In Japanese media, a Yandere is a character, often female, who starts sweet and gentle, but becomes dangerous when she feels jealous or afraid of losing someone she loves. She may hurt others, or even her lover, to protect the relationship. Yuka matched this idea, at least on the surface. She was pretty. She was quiet. She was in love. And she snapped. But Yuka was not a cartoon. She was a real person. And so was Phoenix. The officers interviewing Yuka took notes. They asked her about her relationship with Phoenix. "We lived together," she said. "I worked at a bar. He worked at a club. We came home late." "Did you fight?" "Yes. He was busy. Sometimes I felt like he didn't need me anymore." "Did you plan to hurt him?" She shook her head. "No. It just happened. I saw his phone. There was a message from another girl. I couldn't take it." In her answers, it became clear, Yuka lived partly in a dream world. She thought of her relationship like a story. A love story with pain, sacrifice, and drama. She told the police, "If I couldn't be with him, no one should. It's better to die with the one you love than to live alone. I thought we could die together in that room." These words shocked the officers. But they also made them realize, Yuka wasn't evil. She was deeply disturbed. Meanwhile, online, her popularity was growing. Some fans created Instagram pages with her photos. Others made edits, video clips with sad music and soft filters. They called her the most beautiful criminal or the real Yandere girl. Some comments were harmless. But others were dangerous. One user wrote, "I wish someone loved me enough to hurt me like that." Another said, "I want a girlfriend like Yuka." The police didn't know about these posts at first. But soon, even they would notice the wave of misunderstanding rising. Japanese news channels started running the story that week. They showed the arrest photo. They explained who Yuka was. Some showed pictures from her social media, smiling selfies, notes to Phoenix, messages of love. The story shocked the public. But also, it fascinated them. People weren't just talking about the crime. They were talking about her face, her behavior, her quiet voice. TV experts debated. Is this mental illness? Is this a crime of passion? Or is she playing a role? Yuka was transferred to a facility for psychological evaluation. Doctors tried to understand if she had a diagnosed condition. Some suspected borderline personality disorder. Others said she had developed delusional thinking, shaped by emotional stress and loneliness. She showed signs of regret but also confusion. I still love him, she said more than once. I don't want him to hate me. She didn't see herself as a criminal. She saw herself as heartbroken. Meanwhile, Phoenix Luna survived. He spent days in the hospital. Doctors said it was a miracle. He lost a lot of blood, but his injuries slowly healed. He didn't speak to reporters. He didn't post anything online. He disappeared from the spotlight quietly, carefully. Some said he was afraid. Others said he was just tired of being part of someone else's story. Whatever the reason, he chose silence. And maybe that was the smartest choice. In the weeks that followed, Yuka became more than just a name. She became a symbol of beauty, of obsession, of blurred fantasy. She had fans who loved her. She had critics who hated her. But she didn't ask for either. She sat in her cell, waiting. Thinking. Writing short notes. Some of them were poems. Others were dreams. Some were letters to Phoenix that would never be sent. The internet had turned her into a character. But behind the photos, behind the stories, she was just a girl who couldn't let go. Months passed after the stabbing. Tokyo moved on, but Yuka Takaoka's name remained in whispers and headlines. The photos, the fantasy, the blood-stained apartment, it had all become something more than real. It had become a symbol. Now, it was time for that story to enter the courtroom. And finally, for the law to speak. Yuka had spent months in detention, going through mental health evaluations. Some doctors said she was emotionally unstable. Others believed she was aware of her actions. She cried in some interviews, but mostly stayed calm, even gentle. Her lawyer prepared a plea of partial guilt. Yes, they said, she did stab Phoenix Luna. But she did not intend to kill him. She was in a state of emotional shock. She was not thinking clearly. Prosecutors disagreed. This was not a moment of confusion, they said. It was a crime of jealousy, a planned act of violence. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was full. There were reporters, lawyers, and a small group of curious strangers. Some of them had followed the story online. A few had even drawn fan art of Yuka. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Yuka was brought in wearing a plain beige sweater and dark pants. Her long hair was tied back. She looked smaller than people expected. Not like a monster. Not like a celebrity. Just a young woman with tired eyes. She didn't look around. She walked slowly and sat down between her lawyers. The prosecutor stood first. His voice was clear and steady. On May 23, 2019, he began, the defendant, Yuka Takaoka, stabbed her romantic partner, Phoenix Luna, in the abdomen with a kitchen knife. The attack occurred in their shared apartment, located above the bar where she worked. He continued. She did not attempt to get help. Instead, she waited calmly beside him as he bled on the floor. She later admitted, "I wanted to die together." This shows intent. This shows she made a decision, not a mistake. Then he added something sharp. She smiled while he nearly died. Now it was the defense lawyer's turn. He stood, adjusted his glasses, and began. Yes, the actions were real. But we must look at why they happened. Yuka Takaoka was not a cold criminal. She was a person in emotional crisis. She believed the man she loved was going to leave her. She acted out of fear, confusion, and mental instability. Not from hatred. Then he said. She did not run. She did not hide. She stayed at the scene. And when police came, she spoke the truth. People in the courtroom listened carefully. Some were confused. Some were moved. Yuka kept her head down. Phoenix Luna was not in the courtroom. He had chosen not to attend. But his voice was heard through a written statement. A court officer read the words out loud. I was in pain. I was scared. I didn't understand why she did it. I don't hate her. I just want peace. I want to live without fear. Please give her help, not just punishment. The room went quiet after that. Even the judge paused for a moment. Next, the doctors spoke. One psychiatrist said, she showed signs of borderline personality disorder, a condition that causes unstable emotions, intense fears of abandonment, and difficulty controlling impulses. She lived in a fantasy. She believed love meant never being apart even in death. Another doctor disagreed. She was emotional, yes. But she understood what she was doing. She knew where to stab. She chose not to call for help. That was a decision, not a symptom. The judge listened. He took notes. He said nothing yet. Finally, the judge asked if Yuka wanted to speak. She stood slowly. Her voice was soft, almost whisper-like. But everyone could hear. I loved him. I still do. I was afraid he didn't need me anymore. I thought, if I can't be with him, I don't want to live. I know what I did was wrong. I never wanted to hurt him. I only wanted us to be together. I'm sorry. She bowed her head. And then sat down again. The trial ended. The judge said the decision would come in 1 week. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked questions. Will she go to prison? Did she mean to kill him? Is this justice, or a love story gone wrong? Online, the arguments continued. Some fans still defended her. Others were angry she still had supporters. Some called it romantic. Others called it abuse. 1 week later, the courtroom was full again. Yuka stood as the judge read his decision. The court recognizes that the defendant acted during emotional distress. However, she made conscious choices. She did not attempt to help the victim. Her actions were dangerous, intentional, and could have resulted in death. He paused. Therefore, the court finds Yuka Takaoka guilty of attempted murder. She did not cry. She did not speak. She only closed her eyes. Then came the sentence. The court sentences the defendant to 3 years and 6 months in prison. There was a murmur in the room. Some were surprised it wasn't longer. But the judge explained. The victim survived. The defendant confessed. She has shown some signs of regret. And psychological reports suggest she needs treatment, not just punishment. Still, many believed it was too short. News spread quickly. Yuka Takaoka sentenced to 3 years and 6 months became a trending topic online. Some users cheered. Others made fan edits again. A few wrote, "Free Yuka." In the outside world, time kept moving. But for Yuka, life paused. She was sent to a women's correctional facility. There, she followed routines, meals, chores, classes. She wrote in a notebook. She drew pictures. Sometimes, she just stared out the window. In time, the world would move on to other stories. New crimes. New dramas. But for many people, the name Yuka Takaoka would remain a strange symbol of love, pain, fantasy, and obsession. She wasn't a monster. She wasn't a hero. She was a girl who didn't know where love ended, and where control began. The courtroom was silent after the verdict. 3 years and 6 months in prison. That was the punishment. But for many, it didn't feel like an end. It felt like a pause in a much deeper story. A story not just about violence but about the human mind. Yuka Takaoka was not a typical criminal. She didn't steal. She didn't hate. She wasn't violent in her past. So why did she do what she did? To answer that, we must look inside her mind. Yuka didn't grow up planning to hurt anyone. She loved anime, fashion, soft colors, and cute things. But somewhere along the way, her idea of love became twisted. She believed that love meant possession. That if someone loved her, they would stay with her forever. And if they didn't, it wasn't just a breakup. It was betrayal. This wasn't just teenage heartbreak. It was something deeper, darker. During the trial, Yuka was evaluated by mental health professionals. Some of them noticed clear patterns of borderline personality disorder, also known as BPD. It is a condition that affects how people think and feel about themselves and others. People with BPD often feel deep fear of being abandoned, intense, unstable emotions, very strong attachment in relationships, sudden anger, sadness, or anxiety, impulsive behavior they later regret. One doctor explained, "She lives in extremes. She's either loved or hated, safe or abandoned. There's no in between." Yuka didn't stab because she hated Luna. She stabbed because she thought she was losing him and couldn't take it. This fear was the root of everything. To someone with BPD, being left by someone they love can feel like death. It's not just sadness. It's like their entire self is falling apart. Yuka had made Luna the center of her world. When she thought he might be with another woman, or when he didn't come home one night, her brain didn't say, "Maybe he's busy." It screamed, "He's leaving me forever." And in that panic, something inside her snapped. What Yuka felt wasn't love. It was obsession. True love respects boundaries. Obsession breaks them. True love allows freedom. Obsession traps. She didn't want to be without him, even if that meant hurting him. Even if that meant dying together. In her mind, that wasn't cruelty. It was a twisted kind of romance. But love should never hurt like that. Much of the public obsession with Yuka came from the idea that she was a real-life Yandere. In anime, a Yandere is a character who is sweet and gentle until love makes them violent. They often say things like, "If I can't have you, no one can." They're dramatic, emotional, and obsessive. To fans, this is fiction. A fantasy. But Yuka was not acting. She was not playing a role. She was a real person in mental distress. Some people online said things like, "She stabbed him because she loved him so much." That is not love. That is illness. That is pain. And romanticizing it is dangerous. After the stabbing, fan pages, memes, and fan art spread like wildfire. Some people wore Yuka's face on t-shirts. Some made jokes about being stabbed by love. Others said they wished they had someone who would go crazy over them too. This shows a deep misunderstanding of mental health. Yuka didn't choose to feel broken. Her brain was wired in a way that made emotional pain unbearable. What she needed was support and therapy, not applause. By idolizing her, people turned her suffering into entertainment. Before the crime, Yuka showed signs of emotional instability. She had dropped out of school. She jumped between jobs. She formed strong emotional bonds very quickly. She said things like, "I want a love that never ends. If he cheats on me, I'll kill him, and me." These were not jokes. They were warning signs. But in many cultures, especially in Japan, mental illness is still a quiet topic. Young women are expected to be cute, soft, calm. When they cry too hard or love too loudly, it's brushed off as drama, not distress. In prison, Yuka finally received some therapy. She was taught about boundaries, healthy relationships, and emotional regulation. She was quiet, well-behaved. She read books. She wrote poems. She still drew anime girls in her notebook, but this time, they weren't holding knives. Some therapists said she began to understand what she had done. That what she called love had been something else. But healing is slow. Especially when the world outside still calls you a star. Phoenix Luna survived. He lived with scars, physical and emotional. In a rare interview years later, he said, "I forgave her. But I don't think she ever understood how deep she hurt me. It wasn't just the knife. It was the trust. The fear. The confusion. I hope she gets better. But I don't want her back." He moved to a new city. Changed his name for a while. Tried to start over. The story of Yuka Takaoka is not just a crime. It is a lesson. A lesson about mental health. A lesson about boundaries. A lesson about how dangerous it can be to confuse fiction with real life. Yuka was not evil. She was lost, afraid, untreated. She lived in a fantasy, one shaped by stories, fears, and emotional pain. When that fantasy broke, she broke too. Mental illness is not cute. It's not romantic. It's real. People who suffer from it need support, not shame. But they also need to be held accountable when they hurt others. There's a balance. And that balance is hard, but necessary. Yuka was released from prison after serving her sentence. She avoided the media. She closed her social media. She disappeared from the public eye. Some say she went back to her hometown. Some say she changed her name. Maybe she's still healing. Maybe she's trying to build a new life. We may never know. But what we do know is this. Her story left behind more than blood. It left behind questions, fears, and a mirror to our own fascination with the broken. Before this story ends, let me say something important. Mental health matters. If you ever feel overwhelmed, hopeless, or trapped in emotions you can't explain, please, talk to someone. A friend. A counselor. A hotline. Your pain is real. But you're not alone. Getting help is not weakness, it's courage. And if you know someone who seems lost in their emotions, who talks about love in ways that feel too extreme, listen. Reach out. Help them before it becomes too late. Together, we can build a world where love doesn't hurt. Where care is stronger than obsession. Where stories like this don't have to repeat. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Rose and Crimes, where we explore true stories with empathy, honesty, and care. Every click helps us keep telling the stories that matter and reminding the world that behind every headline, there's a human heart. Thank you for listening. Stay safe. Stay kind. And take care of your mind.